2022 marks the 50th anniversary of the popular family television series, The Waltons. Now let me pause for a moment. I do realize that it began with a TV movie called The Homecoming, A Christmas Story, that aired on December 19th, 1971. So in a way, I guess The Waltons gets to celebrate two 50th anniversaries, but for these purposes, we're talking about the television series, which ran from 1972 through 1981, and then again in later reunion movies. America's favorite Depression-era TV family became an extension of many viewers' real families. Well, we're going to be celebrating that TV legacy today with several cast members from the Waltons, beginning with Kami Cotler, who played the youngest child on the show, Elizabeth Walton. Kami, welcome to the show, and how are you?
I'm very well. How are you today?
I'm doing good. This is very exciting. You were so teeny tiny when you were first cast in the Waltons. Do you remember anything about your audition?
I don't actually remember anything because I was so little. What I do have are family stories. So what I know was that I had just started auditioning, which I badgered my mom into letting me do. Mm-hmm. And we'd gone for an audition for a Gunsmoke. They were looking for a little girl who had, like, tuberculosis, and I had to cough. And I had no idea how to cough as a 6-year-old. I think I cleared my throat. Right. And the casting director did not cast me in Gunsmoke, but she was on the lookout for redheads because of The Homecoming. So I got called in to audition for The Homecoming as a result, and I got it, and it was my very first part. I know it's pretty unusual to enter acting, audition for 2 or 3 weeks, and then book a gig that basically takes you all the way through high school and elementary school, both of them.
So you have very expensive home movies, basically, of your childhood, is one way of looking at it.
It sort of is. My parents didn't really expect it to last more than 13 weeks, honestly. They'd talked to a friend of theirs who was in the business, and he had said, oh, don't worry, you can sign a 6-year contract for a 6-year-old. These are series. They never go beyond 13 weeks. It's going to get canceled. Everything's always canceled. And between The Homecoming and The Waltons, I had done a series called Me and the Chimp, a little 30-minute comedy with Ted Bessel, which had been canceled after 13 weeks, just as my parents were promised. So no one expected it to become a long-term thing. And my family lived in Orange County. My mom and dad worked, both had jobs down there, so it was not really, it didn't occur to anybody that we should move. And with traffic, it could take an hour to an hour and a half each way. So I did that commute until I turned about, I think, 10 years old. My mom was like, I guess this is going to just keep going. And then we moved up to closer to the studio.
And you mentioned this on your Facebook page recently. When you were taking these long trips back and forth to work, you became something of a devotee of radio.
Well, I had, almost 3 hours a day just sitting in the back seat of my babysitter's car. Back then, without a seatbelt, because, no one wore seatbelts back in the olden days, just rolling around in the back seat, listening to whatever radio station my babysitter was playing. So all of the AM hits of the 70s were known by heart for me, because I heard them over and over again.
We're talking with Kami Cotler, who played Elizabeth Walton on our Waltons 50th anniversary special. I know that the youngest children on the program weren't necessarily given a lot to do early on. So what was your schedule like? Were you there a couple of days a week, or how did that work?
No, I would be there pretty much every day. Because they shot out of order, they didn't really, shoot around people. They just shot mostly around the location of the scene. Though I wasn't, there were never any plots about Elizabeth, I frequently did have a subplot. They liked to kind of pair John Boy's story with something the Elizabeth that was doing that was similar.
Right.
So, I mostly worked 5 days a week. And if I wasn't working, then I was going to school because we were being schooled on the set.
Don't get any shells in there, you'll bite into that applesauce cake and break a tooth.
I wrote a letter to Santa Claus. Told him everything I wanted him to bring.
It won't do you a speck of good.
How come?
How are you going to get it to him? is clean up yonder at the North Pole. Lula's going to get to the North Pole by tonight.
What'll I do, John Boy?
You know, you just give it to me, honey. I'll take it down to the post office and mail it special delivery.
I'm much obliged to you, John Boy.
I think it's a pretty good set if you're going to pick a place to grow up on. I was fortunate enough to, have an entire movie lot, and we were not necessarily all that well supervised. When I was little, David, who played Jim Bob, and I would, if we weren't being used, if we had downtime and we finished school or it was summer, we would just go explore the Warner Brothers back lot. And I can remember walking through the back lot, and if the lake was full of water and there was a canoe, I'd go canoeing. And there was no one around. It was just me knowing that I had at least an hour before they were going to need me again and having an adventure on my own. And I remember playing with the chickens in the chicken coop and picking green beans. So it was odd. I'm a city girl, but I had these little weird experiences that are more like being a country girl because I was on this massive back lot with all these animals and different sets. David and I used to rob the banks on the old Midwest Street. Yeah, it was a fabulous playground, and it was hard work, but it was work that I enjoyed. And to me, especially when I was little, it felt like everybody had come together in a massive game of pretend, with costumes and sets and props, and so it was a fun challenge, and it was something I felt successful at. Everybody was really encouraging and positive, and I felt like I was doing a good job and I was appreciated. So that always makes it easier.
So there's a spoiler for you. If anyone listening to this thought they were actually shooting on location in Virginia, it was actually it was a hilly area near the lot, right?
Yeah, the Hollywood Hills were our mountains. Many people think we filmed in Virginia, and we never ever did. We filmed in Wyoming for the homecoming. And once or twice a year, we would, during the series, drive up to Frazier Park, which is part of the Sierra Nevada kind of mountain range in Southern California. I had a botanist once tell me that he knew that we were in Southern California, but most everybody else just accepted the notion that we were in Virginia.
Because The Waltons was a period piece, and here you are, a young person on television in the 1970s, were you ever secretly wishing that you could do something that reflected contemporary times on the show?
That's a fascinating question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. And not that I can remember. I mean, I can remember wishing that they would write older for me because they tended to, as the baby, they kept Elizabeth young. So I remember being impatient sometimes because the writers weren't always keeping up with my growing. I finally went and complained, like, you can't have people pick me up and carry me. I'm dragging on the ground. It just doesn't work anymore. Our actors aren't that tall. Or having to go in and tell the producers, like, Elizabeth needs to know where babies come from. She lives on a farm, I know. Right. I think she'd know by now. I'm embarrassed pretending as a character that I don't know this. So things like that were more what would bother me.
I have one last question to ask you that, and then we'll wrap up. And this might be another question that I don't think you've ever been asked. I don't think anyone would ask this question. The Waltons was such a phenomenon that there was a Saturday morning cartoon that seemed to be cut from the same cloth. And I don't know if it was inspired by or it must have been. It was a show called These Are the Days. Do you remember anything about this program?
I don't remember, and I watched a lot of Saturday morning cartoons. When was it on?
I think it was on around the same time. I mean, it was a show set in roughly the same time period, and there was a grandpa and a family, and let me just take a look here. I'm actually going to look as I'm speaking to you.
You know what? When CBS put us on, we were not supposed to be successful. They did not anticipate that we would do well. We were against Flip Wilson, and we were against the Mod Squad, and those were very, very popular shows. And the story is that they put on the Waltons to prove to Congress that wholesome family entertainment was not going to be successful. And then when we were successful, and we did eventually, survive and go on to be quite popular, I think a lot of programs did happen. Little House was right after us. Eight is Enough, Apple's Way, quite a few more family-focused programs came on after the Waltons. So I missed the one you're describing, but I'm going to have to look it up.
Well, I just went to the Wikipedia page, and I'll just say briefly, it says under production, due to the popularity of the Waltons, ABC decided to take a flyer on an animated program set around the turn of the century. Well, if you ever make a new video about the Waltons on your YouTube channel, that could be your next topic.
I know. It sounds like a really good topic, and I keep thinking about, I made like a video commentary about one of our episodes a while ago because my daughter was interested in learning how to use the editing software. So I'm like, okay, I'll talk if you want to edit. And it was great fun, but then she got very busy with school, and so I've been on YouTube video hiatus waiting for her to have more free time.
Well, if people want to catch up with you now and everything that you're doing, where would they go?
Well, my Facebook page is where I tend to share information and answer questions. I'm going to be, I think, talking with Judy on her YouTube channel, and we're going to be talking about an episode that I was featured in when that broke her legs. And other than that, I'm busy in education and really enjoying that life.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it.
It was great fun. Thank you for inviting me.
WFDU FM.
And we continue with our 50th anniversary of the Waltons celebration with guest Judy Norton, who played Mary Ellen Walton. Judy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You know, your publicist, Harlan Boll, is a great guy, and he always gives me like an encyclopedia's worth of information. And there's always something that jumps out at me. And I feel like I have to start this interview off by asking you about Ozzie and Harriet. Now, for you to have been on that program, you had to be really, really little.
Well, very early on. I obviously started acting as a child. I did, little musical reviews, blah, 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 and started doing some background work and that kind of thing. So I did some stuff on commercials, and then, ended up getting this call. I believe my sister, because my sister and I both did some stuff from the time we were young. And I think both of us ended up on that show. I could be wrong. I got this call. It was an episode later in the series when David Nelson was working at some sort of office.
Yes, you worked at a law office. I'm a huge fan. I know all about it, yeah.
Yeah, well, they had a number of children, for some reason, who came to, I don't know whether it was, a school day where you go and you visit an office or work, or whether somebody was supposed to know them, but I had no dialogue. I was just part of a small group of children who went to visit the office.
I was wondering, would it be possible for the class to make a little tour of your office? I'm sure it would be most interesting and educational for them.
Oh, well, I imagine it could be arranged.
Oh, wonderful. I know they'd enjoy it.
When did you have in mind?
They're right out in the hall, if it's all right. Thank you. All right, children, come on in. Now, act like little ladies and gentlemen. Don't push.
So you were working with America's favorite TV family before America's next favorite TV family came along.
Yeah, I was well groomed in advance.
I was going to ask if you had any favorite memories of working on the Waltons, and then I saw that you have a YouTube channel where you talk about and share so many of those favorite memories. When did this start?
I started it about the middle of 2020. So partway into COVID, during the whole shutdown, I started just playing around more with some of my social media and things like that, interacting a bit more with some of the Walton longtime fans. And then I noticed that Kami Cotler had done some sort of behind the scenes where she was talking about the filming of the very first episode. She was literally watching a bit of the episode and then talking about exactly what she remembered from, say, the opening credits.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And had a lot of views. And I thought, oh, goodness, there seem to be a lot of people out there who are interested in this. And I thought, well, I could do that. I could interact with the fans that way. So it was really off of Kami's. And I spoke with Kami shortly after that and asked her about it, and she said that her daughter wanted to work on some editing. So Kami only did maybe 7 or 8 segments, really cute, and she has different sorts of things that she remembers than I remember, and some of it amazingly, considering she was only about 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
So I approached mine a little bit differently, and it's just kind of grown over the period, and because people seem to really enjoy it, and the comments have been just quite amazing. The types of things that people say and how heartwarming it really all is to hear how much people are moved by the show. And then, they'd ask questions, and so then I got this idea to start answering the questions, too. So I do these Ask Judy segments. So sometimes I talk about an episode and just thoughts as I watch it, things I remember from filming or things technically behind the scenes. Some people like the technical behind the scenes, some people don't. Some people just like to remember the episode. So it's a mixed bag, so I try to kind of have something for everyone, and then I will do these segments where I literally just pull people's comments that include questions that I think are interesting, and maybe I haven't covered a whole bunch, and I'll just take questions and go, hey, Joe asked blah, 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 and I will answer that question. And my son does my editing.
Oh, well, there you go. See, it all comes back around. So here's my theory, and maybe I'm way off with this, but, we have had this period of turmoil in our country, and we're just coming out of it now. And maybe during that dark time, people were looking for something reassuring, and it kind of ignited this renewed interest in the Waltons.
I hear that a lot. It really, I'm very touched when people say that they maybe hadn't been watching the show so much, but because one of my videos popped up and they decided to watch it, and then they became interested in watching episodes of the series again. People said, oh, I bought all the DVDs and now I'm watching them. And certainly people have commented a lot about how valuable they find the messages of the show to be comforting and a bit of an escape, although it's timeless, that it also allows them to step out of some of what's going on in their day-to-day life, and they find comfort in that.
I can definitely see where that would be the case. I think the show has always been that for people, especially if they didn't really have a great home life, or their home life didn't resemble anything like the Waltons. It's helped them get through that time.
Absolutely. I always thought the show was good when I was doing it, but as the years have gone by, nobody could have predicted that we'd be here 50 years later, and it would be so popular still, be such a part of pop culture and television history, and still running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask this somewhat silly question. I asked Kami this too. I've often wondered this about young actors when you're in a show that's a period show. It's set in the past. And was there ever a part of you as a young person thinking, boy, I wish we could do a disco episode of the Waltons, or, do something contemporary?
I don't know that I thought so much about it as a topic of an episode. We were certainly aware, particularly when we started, because we were early in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So we were very far removed from the fashion of the 70s. I think it was really tough on the boys who had to have their 70s long hair cut short.
Right.
And we still hear people say that, oh, the boys' hair wasn't short enough, that wasn't accurate. And I know as we went later into the series, into when we were actually in the early 80s for real, I've commented on how I can't believe they let the girls get away with some of the hairdos that, when I got my layered Farrah haircut, that they let me wear that. I was like, I think, I don't know what that was about and why they let that happen. I'm sure I whined and complained about wanting to look pretty.
This next question is not Waltons related, but you were also on battle of the network stars, and you competed on this. And here's what I've been told, and maybe you can confirm this, that everybody took it, maybe not everybody, but most of the celebrities took it very seriously and were extremely competitive.
Absolutely true.
Wow.
I mean, there may have been a few people who not so much, but what I felt, and I did 3 of them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the very first day, because we shot over the course of a weekend at Pepperdine University in Malibu, you might arrive the first day and go, oh, this is just so fun. And it didn't take more than about 1 or 2 events for even the people who were thinking it was just fun to be in there for blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, I broke a finger, I sprained an ankle, and there were other people who had injuries as well. So we really got in there, and I was very competitive anyway. And some of the men, the first one I did was one of the last ones that Robert Conrad did, and he was notorious for being incredibly competitive. And we had a few conversations, and he actually gave, even though he was on another team, he was on NBC, we were on CBS, but he gave me a few tips, I think maybe parting gifts, that helped in the subsequent battles that I did. I took that advice and I took it to the team and went, hey, here's the deal. This is what, because this is particularly in the tug of war, it was like, this is what he said it took to win this tug of war. This was the strategy, and it worked, and we won.
Wow. So it worked out for you. I don't want to give these more recent projects short shrift, so I do want to mention that, boy, you've got a whole host of things going on here. You have a film, Nowhere to Hide. Right.
That was a film that was very near and dear to me, based on something I had read that concerned me about, to do with mental health and stuff, and experiments that were being done on people, particularly during the Vietnam War, which actually Michael's husband confirmed for me. The way soldiers were being experimented on, and I thought, wow, if this is true, this is terrible, So I kind of wrote this script around that idea, and was involved in making sure, in getting the film made, in producing it, and also the lead character. We have not to date gotten any kind of major distribution, but it is something that you can find on some streaming platforms, including Tubi, which I like to recommend to people because it's free, and so they can see the film without having to get another subscription. Right. The DVD is available through, I think maybe Walmart, I believe Amazon. So if people want the actual DVD, they can also get it, if they want it personally signed, they can get it through my website, and I sign them and send them out. Same thing with my CDs. If people want hard copies of my CD, they can order it through my website, judynorton.com. Just go to the shop, and I sign anything that people purchase through that shop and send it out. I'm actually working on a Christmas CD that my goal was to have it out by this coming holiday season at the end of the year. So, another COVID project. That was the thing. COVID hit, and you go, what can I actually do during COVID? So I've kind of picked up things that I could work on during that time. What have I had sitting on a back burner that I've been wanting to do? And that was one of them.
So that's judynorton.com, and the YouTube channel is just Judy Norton, right?
Yeah, if they look, Judy Norton channel is probably how they'd find it. Yeah. Well, I thought I wouldn't try to be too clever.
Well, it's straight and to the point, just like the conversations.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Good talking to you.
We're wrapping up our 50th anniversary celebration of the Waltons with the matriarch of the Waltons. That would be Olivia Walton herself, Miss Michael Learned, as she was billed on the program. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. And, I was going through your background. What are your New Jersey ties?
Well, I was in Hackettstown until I think the second grade. During the war, my father was fighting in World War II, and we lived in Hackettstown during that period. I was a little girl, but I do remember the house, and I remember certain people, and it's where I got my first cat.
Wow.
And a little guy named Larry Beatty walked in with this cat in his arms. He said, "This cat is lost." So I started crying and saying, "I want it." My mother said, "Okay." And that was Hackettstown, New Jersey.
Fantastic. Well, that's only about 40 minutes from us, so that means that technically we can claim you as one of our own.
Well, thank you. I'd like to be claimed.
And it's a beautiful little town, Hackettstown. I'm sure it probably hasn't changed all that much, to be honest with you.
Well, I remember a wraparound porch and a kind of, I didn't know it then, but I would say now a kind of Victorian house. My memories of Hackettstown are my father going to war, and I knew it was something important because they woke us up, and I remember he was in uniform, and there were three of us, three girls at the time, and we were saying goodbye, and we knew it was something important, but didn't quite know what it meant, I guess. And I have a lot of memories of Hackettstown, actually, which is I don't have a lot of memories of the rest of my life because it was so full and wonderful, but not always wonderful, but full certainly. And but Hackettstown was a pretty good memory. My grandmother, unfortunately, was dying. My mother's mother, also in Hackettstown. But we had a wonderful woman who came in and helped my mother, I only know her by her name as a child, and her name was Nanny, and we loved her beyond words. So I have a lot of happy memories.
It's an interesting thing. I probably couldn't tell you what I did last week, but I can think back to when I was a child, and I can remember, a room I grew up in and played in. Isn't it funny how these things really imprint on your memory and stay there?
They do, actually, and I don't. I even remember some earlier memories, which were when we lived in Virginia, but. Yeah, and then you grow up and kind of everything gets all jumbled up because your life gets so busy and so full you can't remember a damn thing.
Well, your life now is so busy and so full, and I know that you've got a very interesting new project to talk about. But if you don't mind, for just a moment, I want to take you way, way back. In fact, this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Waltons becoming a TV series. I know last year technically would have been the real 50th, right? With the TV movie that was, I think, in the end of 71.
Oh, right. Yeah, The Homecoming was the pilot, I think. Yeah.
Do you remember getting that role of Olivia Walton?
Of course. My gosh. It was huge.
Yeah.
I was desperate at the time. I was going through a divorce. I had no money and 3 kids to support, and I just came down on a whim to L.A. I was living in San Francisco, and I came down on a whim. I thought, I'll learn the freeway, so if I get an audition or something, I won't arrive with, my shoes soaking from sweat, being lost, and there was this part that I didn't think I was right for. But I showed up anyway, so I guess the moral of this story is show up, and you never know what's going to happen, because I got the part.
What were they looking for if you didn't think you were right for the part? Who were they looking for?
I was 32, and I had just 32, and I had short blonde hair, and they were looking for a woman in her 40s with long red hair. Luckily, I at least had long hair, so I had it up in a bun on the top of my head, and I was staying in a motel, a cheap motel, and I put on my best dress and showed up, and I remember a long table with a bunch of men sitting around it, and somebody said something about, are you willing to test? And I thought, oh, God, I don't do tests very well. I'm making myself sound very stupid, but I was so nervous I didn't really know what they were talking about, because to me Hollywood was a huge, Hollywood. And they said to do a screen test, and I said, of course, and so I did. And a couple of days later, I get the phone call. I'm still in the motel, and my agent said, guess what, you're about to become the mother of America.
Well, you sure did. You must have wowed them at that audition, that's for sure.
I don't think I wowed them at the audition at all.
No?
I think there was a woman named Ethel Wynand who was the head of casting at CBS. Because I saw Dinah Shore showed the audition on her show, and when I saw it, I thought, good God, why did they give me that part from that? And but I think this woman, Ethel, had seen my work at ACT, the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, and from what I was told later by a director who was a friend, a mutual friend, and he said, she went to bat for you. She wrestled Fred Silverman to the ground over you, and because he apparently didn't want me, and she insisted, and I guess she won the fight, and God bless her. It was like God's hand on my shoulder.
I think when most people envision what it must have been like for the adult actors to work day in and day out on the set of the Waltons, they envision that it had to have been a very peaceful and quiet set. But from what I understand and what I've read, it was kind of like Frat House on Walton Mountain.
Oh, my God, yes, it was at times. And I think thankfully so, because you can get pretty bored pouring coffee, from my perspective. I'd worked with Francis Coppola that very season doing Private Lives, and I had played in Cleopatra, in Shaw's Anthony and Cleopatra, and suddenly I'm saying, more coffee, John, and time for bed, kids, and it was excruciating for me at first. I just couldn't stand the waiting and the boredom. I learned after a while, even though I was so grateful for the break and for the money, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was sure double what I'd been making. And then of course, I just thought it was going to be something to put on my resume. Having done a television show in the United States, I'd done work on television in Canada, but not here. And lo and behold, it happened.
It sure did.
And I was so grateful. I missed being in the theater, but I put my kids through school, good schools, private schools, and gave me financial security at a time when my life was sort of upheaved, so to speak.
Among the guys on the set of the Waltons, just going back to that for a moment, there was mooning going on, is this correct?
Oh, God, no. No, of course not. Not on the Waltons, are you kidding me? Certainly nobody would want to see Will Geer's or, for that matter, even Ralph's. But yes, there was a lot of mooning going on, I have to tell you. And it wasn't funny sometimes. It's like, please, I have to shoot a scene now, and I can't stop laughing. Anyway, yeah, I mean, boredom will make you do very strange things.
It had to have been fun. It had to have been something about the 70s, because that happened on the set of The Godfather too.
I didn't know that.
Oh,
really?
yeah. Oh, gosh,
well,
yeah.
Who was mooning whom?
They were all doing it. Robert Duvall, Brando, all of them.
What is it with these guys back in the 70s?
I don't know. That was how you broke the tension.
I don't know. Women don't do that.
No, they don't.
I guess women flash their breasts.
Honestly,
not
only men would be caught up in something like that. Well,
anyway, I didn't care, but they were fun, and I loved Ralph deeply. I mean, we had that love you saw on the screen with Ralph and the kids was very real. It wasn't really acting. It was just I know it sounds corny and everything, but we really did have a bond, all of us, and still do. I mean, the kids are middle-aged and have kids of their own now, and we're still very close as a family.
Well, I know that there's no upheaval now. It's steady the course for you because you had, first of all, a recent project we should mention, this film, Second Acts.
Thank you. That's a little short film that a man named Jerry Pass, who's a producer and a friend, and he just said, would you be willing to do this? And I said, sure. And it's a sweet little love story between an African-American man and a white woman who, as children, were not allowed to, who were friends as kids, but then because of her racist father, they were not allowed to play together as kids. But they reconnect as adults in their later years, and it's a love story.
And that can be seen on Shorts TV, which is a direct TV channel. Sort of
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's sort of
great.
It's like TCM for short films. And
it was really a nice project. I enjoyed working on it. It was wonderful, actually.
And now you have a new show coming out, but we can't really talk about it.
It was a very interesting and very good experience for me. But I will talk to you as soon as I'm allowed to.
Okay.
I'll tell you everything.
So we'll just say that there is a project on the horizon, and soon we can talk about it, but we can't talk about it now.
Right, and it will be on Netflix. Yes.
Okay.
We can say that.
All right, so a Netflix show soon to come. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us today. And I'll tell you what, after talking to you, I want to go visit Hackettstown. I haven't been, I mean, I get as far as Dover, and I don't go a little further. I should go visit Hackettstown. I haven't been there in a while.
I don't think I've been back to Hackettstown since I first left. But anyway, hi, New Jersey. It was a happy early time in life.
Well, if I ever bump into anybody you knew, I'll say that you said hello. How about that?
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. I think they're all gone now, but maybe there's somebody still alive.
Somebody's still around there. Thank you so much for chatting with us. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.